from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Anthony Franco. Anthony, thank you very much for being here with me today. The way I love to do it is I keep some suspense for the audience. So this is why I let my guests introduce themselves. So tell us more about you, your journey, and what you're currently up to. And then we start the conversation from there. Just as a teaser for the audience, we're going to talk a lot about AI and, of course, about entrepreneurship. So, Anthony, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you did catch me off guard a little bit. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've started and sold 6 companies. Most of them been in tech or advanced manufacturing. And now I'm doing a couple things. I'm hosting my own podcast called How to Founder. And that's just an tactical entrepreneurial advice where we dive deep into one subject every episode. And I'm working as I help companies sell. So I help entrepreneurs who are ready to exit. And I'm working as a launch architect. I don't know how else to put it. My job is helping companies launch new things, new products, new channels. And right now I'm working on something with a company called OneReach, and I'm helping them launch the principles of operationalizing AI.
Cool. That's something which looks to me interesting about operational AI. So tell me more how to operationalize it. I would say, why? What's wrong in the market? I would say.
Well, yeah. Let me maybe give you a little bit of context around that. So a very dear friend of mine, Rob Wilson, runs this company called OneReach, and it's the most advanced enterprise AI agentic platform on the planet. Like they were rated by Gartner and Forrester. He wrote a New York Times best-selling book called The Age of Invisible Machines around the future of AI in the enterprise. And one of the problems he has is the system that he built is incredibly robust, which is a nice word of saying it's very complex. It can do anything in AI when you're operationalizing and orchestrating agents. And so he asked me to come in and take a look and help him package it to make it more understandable for a broader audience outside of enterprise because they're looking to go down market. And so the first thing that they've been doing this for almost a decade now. So they've been in the space even before GPT launched. OpenAI launched ChatGPT. So they've learned some things and navigated how you orchestrate automation within organizations, and didn't really they've just become naturally good at that, but they didn't really document how and what, and finally boiled down to when they go into an organization to help them automate systems or processes, they figured out the first rule is don't automate bad stuff, right? Don't take what your people are currently doing and automate that, because that'll produce, you're going to automate bad processes. And so you kind of have to unwind how you're doing things now, relook at it, use design thinking to figure out how do you make it better. And then once you've simplified the current processes and boiled it down into first principles, now you have a foundation to start automating. And so I started documenting how they do that so that they could do it better internally and maybe enable partners. And I said, Rob, this is really good. What you figured out is amazing. We need to open source this. And he totally agreed. So it didn't take much convincing. So I've spent quite a bit of time documenting that process, and then bringing in some other processes like in lean, they talk about pull first. So we've added some pull first methodologies. We've looked at the Musk algorithm, for example, and incorporated all the great things about legacy processes, and then applied it to the new modern AI, and launched two things. We've launched the AI First Principles. So that's just AIFirstPrinciples.org, which just talks about the mindset that is needed, and then kind of this recipe or cookbook on how to do it, which is called the Wiser Method.
That looks interesting, and something, while you explaining this, came to my mind, when you said people just start to automate and, integrate AI in the processes. Like, this is very much similar to when, of course, and still ongoing, when people started to shift from on-premise to cloud, and they start to do what's called lift and shift.
Yes.
And what happened with lift and shift is, because they didn't go and change the architecture, which is kind of a legacy architecture, they start to say, hey, like, why we're paying that much to the cloud? And yeah, people say, because you just, copied whatever you had, you moved it to someone else's data center, and you didn't try to understand how the new technology can actually help you in speeding up, saving you money, or I don't know. So looks like, and I get what you're saying, Anthony. Now, you mentioned something about the mindset. Here's the thing. Do you believe, or do you think that leaders, get this, they get, taken by surprise? Because when I mentioned the cloud, and I chose it for a reason, it was like a kind of a slow adoption. AI came and everyone wanted to jump on the one wagon, and they wanted to bring AI to their organization. Do you think like this is the mindset problem that leaders have? Like, hey, before we do any initiatives, let's go and find out like what are the current problems, and if we can solve this by adopting automation, AI, and so on. So what is, I would say, the mindset shift that leaders need to do in order to have a successful move to the AI age, or the AI era, as some people call it?
Yeah, this is a real. So, do I think leaders get it? No, I still don't get it fully. Like, it's hard for me, and I've been in it, and looking at how the top company does it for enterprise for over a year now, and I'm still like, this is a fundamental shift in how work gets done. You're starting to see companies like, there's lots of announcements where, like Shopify, for example, they're telling all their employees they need to be using AI for 10 or 20% of their work, which is, you give everybody a subscription to ChatGPT, and now they're kind of off to the races. And I think that's an obvious first step. But in reality, the mind shift. So the way I'm looking at it, and the way I've kind of wrapped my head around this a little bit, is we're going from this assembly line mindset of how things get done in an organization. So just like how Ford invented the assembly line, you stamp out 10,000 units of the same product over and over again, and that's best done and most efficiently done in an assembly line. And so we've applied that to how things are done within an organization, and just how knowledge work is done. And AI enables something completely different, especially agentic, orchestrating agents within an organization, because now you don't think about things necessarily in an assembly line. It's more natural. It's more fractal. It's more chaotic. How things organically, think about how nature develops things in the world. That's more how you have to think about how AI is leveraged in an organization. Now that can be scary because you're now thinking about, well, nature's completely disorganized and random, and so it's more about like thinking about your organization not as a forest or an assembly line, but as a garden. And so garden has architects, and it's architected in a way. And this is very abstract. I realize it's very abstract, but it's the best metaphor I have when you have to think about letting things organically grow within your company using AI, rather than trying to keep control over how every little thing happens within your organization. And that's really, it's a very difficult mindset shift it's a difficult leap to make.
Now, I want to ask you about a few things. Now, this is again in the mindset, and I believe also, and correct me, Anthony, if I'm wrong, one of the challenges, there are some legacy in the enterprise world, let's put it this way, in companies, traditional system. And I know, like you say, they are outdated, they're broken. So for example, Six Sigma, Agile, and you mentioned
They
about
totally are broken. Yeah.
I agree. And you came with the wiser, methodology, right? So first of all, let's talk about the broken things in these. I know like some people might be upset because we're discussing this, but guys, the world is changing. So, but again, as someone, the nice thing about your profile, Anthony, is like you've been on both sides of the table. So you've built businesses, you exited multiple times, you're a serial entrepreneur, and you've seen it all. Why what we have, or what still people believe in, is broken, and we need a change?
Yeah, and broken is
Nice way to
broken's
say it.
a hyperbolic way of looking at it. So let's talk about Agile really quick. So Agile came about because waterfall methodologies were broken. Designing these huge monolithic, progressively programmed systems, you would spend months, years until you had something that you could put in front of users to figure out whether or not it was good or not. So Agile was invented based on many failed software projects. And it really was kind of a revolution, and still has a place, especially in circumstances. And so does Six Sigma, and so does BPM. So those processes still have places. For example, if you're in a highly regulated environment, or if you're in an environment where if you make a mistake, somebody loses their life, you need these really rigid processes and really manageable processes to manage that. But most of us are not in an industry where those things are true. That where a mistake can be quickly fixed and doesn't have a lasting impact. And so Agile tried to solve that a little bit, but it's still too dogmatic. And here's why. So one of the companies I started was a company called Effective. It was acquired by WPP, and we were the world's first user experience agency. And what that means is we cared about the design of the UI first, and then we built the system behind it. And it really opened my mind on how impactful design thinking is. Design thinking is basically think about the outcomes first, design what you want, and then engineer behind that design. And you do that by understanding, having empathy for the business, having empathy for the end users, having empathy for the customer, having empathies for the stakeholders or employees, whatever. And then really understand how things get done, and then build a system behind that. And at the time, it was revolutionary, but those processes still matter. And when you look at something like Agile, and you say, okay, so when does design get involved with Agile? And Agile respects design very little. Like they even like shove it in what they call sprint zero, right? Like they don't even give it a true sprint. They call it sprint zero. It's like the design is the thing that you do first, and then you let us engineers get in here and solve the real problems. And like that doesn't work anymore. And you don't need these heavy processes to engineer, because you can agentically, organically improve the system incrementally, as long as you have it well designed and you're thinking about it from a design first principle.
I'm very big fan of design first principles. Now, saying that, and maybe if you're watching this on YouTube, people will see the AI first principles.org over there. So what are these principles, Anthony?
Well, the principles are just, it's really just how do I describe it? It's the foundation of how we think about implementing AI from a design thinking process. You know, it's very simple. It's very lightweight. Think first, think AI first, but automate last. So understand what you're trying to automate before you try to automate, and then simplify it. You question everything. You honor human creativity, because that's really where the power comes in. That's really where the leverage point is for organizations now, is the human element. And we've tried to engineer the human element out of it, and we're saying, no, the human element is everything. You embrace play. So this needs to be fun. You use first principles, it's in the name. You focus on outcomes. So what is the thing that we're trying to accomplish, and you measure on those outcomes. You simplify relentlessly. And then you create pull. So and that's a concept that we pulled from Lean, which create pull means you subtract a whole bunch of stuff, and then you add based on user or system demand. So it's basically simplifying. And then we on top of the AI first principles, which is just essentially, think of it like, I hate the term manifesto, but think of it as a manifesto. And then the wiser methodology is more about how do you put those principles into practice.
Now, let me ask you, Anthony, does this, I know the answer, but let's, hear it from you.
Okay.
Because we're using some terminologies that someone would say, hey, like this fits more a startup. Does it fit a big organization also as well?
It's such a good question. I think it fits an org. Look, there's you know the answer to this. Any answer in technology is it depends. so it depends, right? So I think it fits better, and it was designed more to understand existing ways of doing things, and then re-engineering it as though you're a startup. So it's kind of startup thinking or simplification of a process thinking. You can apply it to startups, but what a startup has that enterprises don't is they have a blank slate. They don't have systems that have decades of tribal knowledge around it and decades of overcoming problems that existed and navigated those problems. They don't have approval processes, right, to get to navigate through. And so startups have a little bit of an advantage here, but you can't apply the same kind of thinking at a startup, especially if you're trying to disrupt an industry. You can look at how other industries do it, apply the wiser method to it, and then re-engineer your systems based on somebody else's. That's actually a great use case for it. But it also works really well in organizations that are kind of stuck in bureaucratic nonsense. It was really designed for that circumstance, to break free of the bureaucracy within your organization and really leverage and harness the power of AI and orchestration of agents.
Now, the natural question that I want to follow on, because we've talked about agentic AI and, agents, automating things. I know it's kind of now a cliche question, but still some people are doubting Anthony, or some people are having this fear effect. Oh, like the agent will completely replace me and I will not have a job. So, and again, like this is something I think it's gonna take some time for people to digest. But really, in reality, why people should not be fearing, agentic AI and agents and automation, and you know, how do you think like we can shift this way of thinking in a just fear and doubt and pushing back? What you can share with us about that?
Well, I mean, the another cliche saying that you've probably seen a lot is AI is not coming for your job; it's coming for people who don't. It's coming for the jobs of people who don't use AI. And when talking to Rob Wilson, again the CEO of OneReach, when talking to him about this, he's like, actually, no, AI is not coming for people's jobs; it's coming for companies. It's not going to replace your job; it's going to replace the company, which is I don't think, again, he thinks in terms of 10 years, right? So he's an absolute visionary when it comes to this stuff. And so it took me a while to wrap my head around that. And like, what does that mean? It means that companies that don't embrace agentic technologies are going to be gone because you're going to be able to provide better services faster than any company that's not embracing this way of thinking. It's you are and companies get that. Like a lot of companies understand we need to get into this AI thing. So it's going to take a decade for this to be actually true. But if you're not employing AI as a company, you're going to die, period. That and it's about, for people, it's about how do you get people to do what people are good at, which people, like I suck at this, and I think most people are the same. Doing the same thing over and over and over again is really hard. And also doing everything bespoke is very hard. Right. Doing everything differently every time. That's what AI is good at. AI is good at doing the same thing over and over and over again every single time. And it's also good at, that's what automation is good at. AI is good at everything being personalized and customized. Those are two things that are hard for humans beings to do. Where humans can come in is they can be creative and have empathy for how those systems are built and how they're deployed. So it's just you as an individual. I mean, you do this too, right? I can now do the work of 10 people because I employ AI. That doesn't mean that we're going to replace 10 people's jobs. It means humanity is going to have 10 times the velocity of output that we have now. So Elon says it's the age of abundance. That's what he's talking about. It's because we're just going to be able to produce a lot more for a lot less money. Therefore, all of us are going to have this really abundant series of options. And so I don't think it's going to replace jobs at all. I think we're just going to live in this incredible era.
Yeah, there will be no pressure because, I'm envisioning now, I changed my mind a lot in the past 2.5 or 3 years because, we people cannot stay on vacation all the time, right? So they need something to be busy with. But I believe people will enjoy maybe what they are doing more, rather than just sitting and doing repetitive tasks that they hate because they don't like to do repetitive tasks, right?
I totally agree.
I think I'm not saying it's a problem. Let's call it a challenge, which I believe we're gonna pass it somehow, is passing the AI knowledge to the mass population, right? I know like a lot of companies now, they started initiating these, let's train everyone on AI, let's everyone get into this Gen AI thing. But I think, they're still kind of missing, what really AI can do. Because AI is not just you go and type a prompt and it gives you like the best marketing, I don't know. So I think, people needs to get some, I don't know how, maybe you have an answer, Anthony, like how we can upskill people in organizations to also be ready for the next wave.
Yeah, I don't. This is a better question for Rob, because he can see, like I said, he can see things 10 years out. I'm more of a biographer of this. Like, I look at what's happened and go, oh, that's interesting. Let me get that out for folks. So I don't know how this I can only tell you how it manifested for me, right? At first it's like, well, let's take a step back. Actually, when you say you're in AI, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. When you hear somebody say I'm in AI, like, does that mean you're designing chips for NVIDIA? Does it mean you're working at OpenAI? Does it mean you're in machine learning for research, or does it mean you're in ChatGPT 3 times a day? And so the answer is yes, all of those. But there is, and to kind of take it full circle back, there is no I'm in operationalizing AI. There's nobody talking about how do we operationalize, and how do we take this new technology and think about it in a way that we can actually put it into practice. And that's really kind of, I for lack of a better word, that's really what I'm most excited about, and what I get to be involved in over the next few years is helping organizations do exactly what you're saying. And that is, how do we shift our mindset and put it into practice in a way that really makes a dent in the organization?
Right. Now, let me ask you, Anthony, something I hope you would find interesting. You having this, amazing, experience of being serial entrepreneur, and, you've done it multiple times. Now, maybe second-time founders who are listening to us, they might relate. If you are first-time founder, listen well. So from this methodology, like from using the AI, so there are some steps usually entrepreneurs they need to do, when they start any new venture, I would say. So starting from ideation, and then finding the product that they want to work on, the problem they want to solve, then kind of an MVP, product market fit, and so on and so forth. How much of this AI agents can help in your opinion?
So I'm going to twist that a little bit. I'm going to twist that question just a little bit. I think it's a really interesting question. So sorry for the pause. I want to make sure I get this right.
No worries.
The companies that win are going to be companies that think small, not big. And what I mean by that is, if it can be vibe coded, what value are you bringing as an entrepreneur? So really, where I think the economy is shifting and will continue to shift is those entrepreneurs that can do the things that are uniquely human: build relationships, sell, creative ways of looking at a market in a different way. The engineering of a product is commoditized. So it's what new thing that I can bring to market that I am uniquely able to create a human-to-human connection to get awareness of it, and then grow that company. So when I mean go small is, you're now going to meetups. Like, it's hand-to-hand combat now. It's talking to individuals. If you're trying to automate your outreach, everybody is. It's all noise. So it now goes back to, you need to be good at the things that most people don't like doing, which is this notion of connecting with a real live human being and having a conversation with them about what you're doing, solving their problem, and selling to them one-on-one. So when you talk about how do you leverage AI, that's kind of going to be easy, and it's really easy now. The hard part is what we need to get good at as entrepreneurs, which is connecting with other humans.
That's an interesting take. So I agree with you, Anthony. Like, we are absolutely seeing a huge shift. Of course, I cannot predict the future. I don't claim to.
Me either. Yeah, me either.
Yeah, but of course, like, try to see patterns, right? So, and more than any time before, what I see, because you mentioned about selling, right, and being able to communicate to other human beings. So first, you mentioned finding the niche, basically. So going small.
You need to be an expert in a niche for sure.
And then being able to speak to those folks in their language, right?
Yes.
And then you mentioned something very, I think it's underrated in entrepreneurship usually and in startups. And this is what, when you started, when you did the introduction, it's about the channel and distribution, Anthony. Tell me more. Like, does founders really underrate distribution, sales, and how they're gonna reach to their ICPs, ideal customer profiles, whatever you want to call it?
Yes. Yes, and developing an ICP doesn't make it that much better. I find, look, I suffer from this. I personally suffer from this. I'm a product guy. I'm an engineer at heart, right? So I want to go solve the problem. And in my naive, still, after doing it for multiple decades, I still think if I build something cool, people are going to connect with it. And I just need to build something cool and I'm done. And that is absolutely not the case. The building something cool is probably 20% of the equation. Getting awareness is 80% of it. Developing distribution channels, developing awareness, developing a process to move a customer through a sales pipeline. That's the hard part. And so many founders I talk to suffer from that. There's even a oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it. Antler is the name of the accelerator. Yeah. And Antler's hypothesis is, and it's a brilliant one, is we need an engineer and we need a sales guy. And they don't even you don't even need to come into their accelerator with a business model. You need to come into an accelerator with either go-to-market expertise or engineering expertise. They put a bunch of folks in a room and say, all right, go try to make some startups. And they just let everybody kind of mix. And it's early yet. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's the right way of thinking about it. It's like, we need go-to-market and sales. And it's hard to find that in one person. That's why I think co-founders really matter. There are some unique individuals that have both those genes. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think go-to-market is, I've seen a lot of amazing products that went nowhere because they didn't have that sales engine and go-to-market figured out. A lot.
Yeah. I think the best combination is the one you just described, Anthony, like a super engineer and a super sales guy. When I say sales guy, someone who knows how to position the product, how to talk about it, how to be able to show the value proposition that they are bringing. And yes. Always the example, which is traditional example that comes to my mind, I give Apple, right? And I say there were two Steves, and one was a great engineer and the other one was a good sales and marketing guy, and it worked for them because and I think maybe intuitively they didn't decide to do it this way, but because one was shy, the other one was the aggressive kind of guy who want to just put his dance in the world. So it worked perfectly for them. But even when I studied or I tried to analyze other successful startups, especially if they had two or more founders, the best ones that really they had this wow effect were the ones where you had the brilliant engineer and the brilliant sales marketing guy, to your point. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't have it, you can treat it like a craft and go learn it. But you have to treat it like a craft. You can learn go to market. You can learn how to write good marketing copy. You can learn how to sell. All of those things are now, are you going to be as good as somebody that's natural? Actually, you're going to be better because you know the product better than somebody that's natural at selling, but doesn't know the product as well as you if you're an engineer. So you can overcome it, but you have to treat it with respect. You have to understand the motivations behind salespeople. You have to understand the motivations behind your customer. You have to have empathy for who you're talking to. But you can develop it. I've seen it. I've done it.
Right. Now, the question for you, Anthony, and because, you did multiple startups, I'm curious, honestly. I interviewed, some serial entrepreneurs, but what pushes you to go to the next adventure? Like, what is that? I don't know, like secret sauce, let's call it.
I don't know so I'm inherently a broken individual. so if I'm not moving, I'm going to die. So it's like a shark. Like if a shark stops moving, they're going to die. I'm the same way. Maybe it's a bad metaphor to put out there about myself, but I if I'm sitting and watching Netflix for too long, I just become a very miserable human being. So for me, it's about moving and progressing and growing and learning and feeding that curiosity gene. And I wish I could relax. Like I get jealous of people that like, yeah, I'm going to go fishing this weekend. And I'm like that. I wish I could enjoy that. but I can't. I don't have hobbies. My hobby is entrepreneurship. So, I think that makes me a little broken. So I don't know if it's healthy to be like me.
No, I see you. I see it is. By the way, mentioning the sharks, I know that you were on Shark Tank and you worked with Mr. Wonderful. Well, just quickly, how was the experience?
Once in a lifetime. So Kevin O'Leary, I'm not supposed to say this because I'm going to ruin his reputation, but he's actually a really good guy. We struck a deal on Shark Tank. He was super helpful in growing that company. And being on that show, look, if you're an entrepreneur, you have always imagined yourself on the show. Now you can say, I don't want to be on the show, but deep down you're like, you've pictured yourself on that stage pitching, right? So the fact that I got to do it was, it's once in a lifetime. And, I would never want to do it again, but the fact that I got to do it, what a fun and great experience.
Okay, good to know. Now, tell me a bit more about the podcast because I know from myself, right? So it's not like something. First, it's not an easy decision to start a podcast. People think, let's start a podcast. It's not, guys. At least for me, it wasn't an easy because I didn't want to just, be outside and show my face and, get my voice out for the sake of it. I needed really to think about, some mission. What was your motive to start your podcast, Anthony?
Yeah. So the podcast is called How to Founder, just howtofounder.org, howtofounder.com. And it started, so I have like I said, I have a passion for entrepreneurship and am really dialed into the entrepreneurial community here in Colorado. And one of the things that is true, especially if you spend any time around entrepreneurs, is it's extremely lonely. And it's lonely because you're constantly failing. You're constantly experiencing something new that you've never run across before, and you don't know how to solve it. And you don't feel, look, I didn't anyway. I didn't feel like I could go out and ask other entrepreneurs how to do it because you're admitting that you're not good enough, right? So I've always wanted to write this reference manual for entrepreneurs to say, all right, when you experience when you experience, what does working in versus working on the business mean? And I'm actually having a podcast episode about that tomorrow. How do you read a P&L? How do you read a balance sheet? How do you hire your first employee? Like all of those tactic things. I wanted to write a reference manual, but I don't want to write a book. So I came to it's a really good friend of mine, Chris Franks, and I said, why don't we write this reference manual and do it as a podcast? And so that's where it started. That's the origins. Just to serve entrepreneurs and make it a little bit less lonely, and a little bit easier to frame a mental model around something when you hit something for the first time. And we've been doing it for almost a year now. We have 90 episodes in the can. We do it a couple times a week, have guests on, and we tell bad dad jokes and talk about entrepreneurship, but we dive deep on one topic every episode. I would say most of them are pretty good. Some of them, you're like, oh, that guest really could have done a little bit better job explaining it rather than selling themselves. But for the most part, I'm really happy with the direction of the podcast.
Yeah. Like, it's my own theory, by the way, Anthony. Like, I don't think there's a bad episode, right? And by the way, it's a confession. When I started to do this, I was doing solo. I didn't have, the format in my head wasn't like as interview format. And, I was like doing it daily because it's very short. Like I was just recording myself maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. And, after I published it, what, like this would be the worst thing I've done ever. And, after 2 days, I see, the downloads and people writing me, hey, like you just like, it's good like you talk about this. And when I start to do the interviews, people, I expected people to tell me like, are you crazy? Why like you embarrassing yourself? Like you could have asked better questions.
I love that story.
And
I love that story.
And you know what? After a while, I was thinking, to be very frank with you, I was thinking that the guests are kind to me, saying, hey, like you did fantastic, you asked good questions. And I'm, yeah. but really people, when they start to tell me and said, okay, good, I'm asking good questions. And this is, by the way, motivated me to keep doing this. And so I can feel the same energy and power that you have, Anthony, in this also as well. And of course, people needs to listen to your podcast, because guys, you're gonna be listening from someone who did it 7 times and still building. So Anthony, like after all these years, and I'm sure like you give a lot of advices with the guests that you bring to the podcast, but today let me ask you this question first. So it's important because I believe, and we were talking about the 2 characters, one engineer, one seller or marketer, whatever you want to call it. So we're talking now, or people talking about smaller companies, and some Altman mentioned it, like some other people, they talk about the 1-person company, and do you still like do you believe like this is in the future the norm for like startups and companies?
Yeah, so yes, I think this is going to sound really scary, and I think I've addressed this before, but yes, I think companies are going to get a lot smaller because AI is going to be an enabler of that. But I think there's going to be a lot more companies doing a lot more bespoke things. So I don't think we're going to have this glut of unemployed folks. I think it's just people are just going to start to learn how to use AI and build microservices and personalized services and personalized experiences based on leveraging AI. Do I think there's going to be a 1-person billion-dollar company? I think in the VC land, anything's possible. Like, so maybe there'll be a 1-person company that does $1 billion in valuation. But they're not going to see that money. That one individual is not going to see that $1 billion, right? No. You're gonna need to hire folks and bring folks on. It's also what a lonely existence to try to achieve that. I'm going to be a single person that's going to do, like, we're tribal. We want to work as a team. We want to work together. You're better you're challenged by a team. So I think smaller teams are going to become a lot more powerful. I think the individual is going to be a lot more powerful, but I think small teams are going to kick a single person's butt every day of the week.
100%. I agree with you 100%. Now, again, it's something, I'm just remember I have to ask you. You did exits also, Anthony, because like when you mentioned about small teams, and we've seen this before, even before the AI became mainstream. So we've seen always like this, you build something, and then a bigger player comes and say, hey, like you guys really built something cool. I want to acquire you. I want to buy your company. And you did it also yourself. So you exited multiple times. When it's time to exit, like when do you think it's a good time for a founder to say,
when's a good time to fall in love?
No one knows. It depends.
It's that personal a question. So I always say it's time to exit when you've lost. So you need to exit 2 years before you've lost any energy for the business, right? So you need to forecast, I'm not going to have the energy to put into this company to keep it sustaining it or growing it in 2 years from now. So I need to start looking at selling the business now. So
signs for it, Anthony. Any signs that people they start to get?
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is how old you are. Like how old are you when you like want to retire? That's usually what drives a sale. Is the owner's retiring and they do want to sit in their chair and watch Netflix and go fishing and golfing, right? That's one of them. By the way, I do not believe that sounds like that for me, that does not sound like a wonderful retirement. Like relaxing like that doesn't jive. And I think most people need a purpose.
Absolutely.
And longevity comes from purpose. So, but anyway, another way of looking at another reason to exit is, it's life moments, right? If you want to do something else, if you're like, I don't want to do this for another 10 years, then let's chat about what is going to take a look like to exit your business in the right way. If you want to take chips off the table, like if you're like, I got all of my eggs in this one basket, I want to diversify. That might be a good reason to exit. If you're self-aware enough to realize that in new hands, the company can go further, that takes a lot of self-awareness. And not everybody has that, me as well. But if you could be that self-aware and say, I want to put this in somebody else's hands, it's really going to have energy to drive it to, 10 to 30 times its growth. In that circumstance, you may want to retain a little bit of the equity in the company and sell it to somebody that can operate it bigger. There's some risk in that too. A lot of times, and I'll say one thing also about building a legacy business. So a lot of folks will say, I'm going to hand my business off to my kids. Mm-hmm. And that rarely works out. So that may be your plan. It may not be your kid's plan. So if that's your plan, actually you should start exit planning. You can start exit planning whenever, even if you're not ready to exit. So you can say, I'm going to exit in 10 years. Let me talk to an expert. I'm happy to chat with you about it too, is how do I structure my business so that I'm ready to exit it in 5 or 10 years? That is also, so you may not even need to be ready to actually start thinking about your exit. And statistically speaking, people exit their business for retirement. They exit to take chips off the table. They exit it because something happens to them. So they pass away, they get in a car wreck, they have a health incident, they have their spouse has a health incident that they need to go take on. So it is always good to be thinking about exiting just in case that thing happens. What other reasons? They also exit to strategics. Some people exit because they want to go work. They don't want to do the entrepreneurial thing anymore. They want to go work for somebody else. So a lot of entrepreneurs will exit and go work for the company that bought them and build a career out of that. So it's really all, it's extremely personal and for all kinds of different reasons.
Very insightful. Absolutely, Anthony. I can, even relate to some stories that I read 100%. As we're closing to the finish, any final things you want to share, Anthony? Anything that maybe I didn't touch on and you want to just, mention it before we close? And of course, as always, ask my guests the call to action, where they can find more and where they can get in touch.
Thank you. So I think I'd like to circle back to something that you said. When somebody says, should I be an entrepreneur? I tell them, no, don't do it. It's hard. It's lonely. You have higher rates of suicide. You're going up against monoliths that have way more resources, time and money, and statistically speaking, you're going to lose. And then I watch them. And if they look at me like I'm an idiot, I'm like, all right, this person's an entrepreneur. Because if I can talk you out of it, then you shouldn't do it, right? So I did you a favor, right? And the most inhibited, so most people, I can't talk out of it. But they get stuck, and they get stuck on the start. And what you said, I think, is really very insightful about how you started your podcast. You're like, I didn't want, like, I was scared. I didn't have a plan. I didn't do it. I didn't have all of my ducks in a row before I started. It was like myself too. When I started my podcast, it was terrible when Chris and I started, but we started, and the first step is always the hardest, but then the next step is harder because you're like, I'm failing. People are telling me this is shameful. People telling me I'm embarrassing myself. Ignoring that is really hard, but getting through that and that perseverance really is what entrepreneurship is about. Getting through it, taking the next step, learning from your failure, embracing failure, embracing the fact that you're gonna screw a lot of things up, and just learning and growing. I would encourage people to take your example to heart and just start and be comfortable with the fact that it's going to be a little awkward and silly, and you're going to be embarrassed, and there's going to be some shame in it. That's okay. That's part of the process.
And believe the process. I tell people you have to believe the process. Of course, I can't claim also I knew this at the beginning, because when someone used to tell me, yeah, you have to believe to believe in the process, I said, what process, right? Like,
process.
I don't see any playbook, or I don't see anything that talks about. But anyway, yeah. And thank you, Anthony, for giving me as example. I try to, and I try to do this not just to, I would say, talk about myself, like really to inspire people, because every time I think about it, I said, okay, I was late to start it, but it's okay. It's good I started. Like, it's better than not doing anything at all. And yeah, thank you for the.
I'm going to be 85 and starting something new, and people are like, what is this guy doing? It's never too late to start. I'm going to be starting
absolutely.
stuff, and I think at my funeral, I'm going to have a startup going. Like I'm going to be starting stuff all the time. So it's never too late.
Absolutely. So what is the best way to get in touch? And
so best way. So if you want to check out AI First Principles, it's just AIFirstPrinciples.org, and there's links to Wiser and all that stuff. Also, just go to howtofounder.com, and my LinkedIn profile is there. The podcast is there. So that's the best way to kind of get in touch with me and maybe lean in onto the podcast.
Great. So audience, don't go left, right to find links. Just again, make the life easy. Put everything in the show notes. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting app, if you're watching on YouTube, of course, you'll find it in the description. Anthony, thank you very, very much. It was like a very, I would say, insightful yet also fun conversation with you today. I really appreciate also your time, and thank you for making it. And usually this is how I end my episode. This is for the audience. So, hey guys, if you just discovered this podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, give me a favor, just subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues, because we're trying, as I was telling Anthony, trying to do an impact, trying to do help, and also follow and subscribe to Anthony's podcast also as well. Do me a favor. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, you send me your messages, your feedbacks, comment. Thank you very much for doing so. I'm super grateful. I know I'm repeating this every single episode this year, but guys, because I'm so grateful for you, because of what you're doing in the, behind the scene for me, you making the CTO show with Mehmet, trending in the top 200 podcasts on the Apple podcast platform in multiple countries. This is something I never saw in the past 2 years. So thank you very much, because without you, I couldn't do it. And thank you also for the trust. And I promise you always to be here and, get the best of the best. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.